Recently, we did a segment talking about shotguns, and specifically what we did was we went out and we shot some rounds so that to demonstrate how shotgun patterns look at relatively close distances. And one of the reasons we did that was because lots and lots of people, since this whole COVID thing started back in about February or March, have been buying shotguns for home defense. Good choice. Shotgun's always a top choice for close quarters defense against an unarmored target, right? Good anti-personnel weapon, good weapon for lots of things. Lots of you out there have bought shotguns. Some of you are very familiar with shotguns because you've used them all your life. Some of you aren't. So we thought it'd be a good idea to talk just briefly about taking a shotgun that you're keeping at home for self-defense. And how do you store that? How do you set that gun up, right? Anytime you're setting anything up for defensive purposes, you're trying to strike a balance. And that balance is between having that weapon ready, accessible, and easily used, if you need it, and at the same time keeping it safe from mishandling by untrained or unauthorized persons, okay? Like, for example, children. You don't want them to have access to things because they might have an accident. You're always trying to strike that balance. How do you do that with a shotgun? Well, it depends a little bit on the shotgun, okay? So most shotguns that are out there for defense, most everything that everybody's bought, relatively inexpensive guns, and they're tube-fed pump shotguns. Tube-fed meaning the shells go into a magazine tube that's under the gun, right? There are other options out there, however, and some of you have those. In front of me, I have one, and I just want to show it briefly to you. This is a Hatsan semi-automatic shotgun. Looks like an AR-15, but it's a shotgun. It's a 12-gauge. Shoots 12-gauge shotgun shells. This one is empty and safe. If you have something like this, how do you store it so that it meets that balance that you're looking for, right? It's accessible, easy to bring into action, but at the same time safe. No matter what the gun is, pistol, rifle, shotgun, no matter what, to keep children away from it, you have to deny them access to that gun. I'm going to say that again. You have to deny them access to that gun. You got to keep them from handling it until they're old enough that you can train them to safely and properly handle it. It means you got to lock it up somehow, okay? Whether it's in a closet or whether it's in a gun locker or whether it's in some sort of ready service locking system, whatever you do, you got to lock it up, okay? So first off the bat, you got to do that. Doesn't matter what the gun is. With a gun like this, even though it's a shotgun, it's a magazine-fed weapon. With a magazine-fed weapon, having this thing readily available but yet still safe is pretty easy. You put shells in the magazine. When you're ready, you can pick the magazine up, put it in the gun, cycle the action once, and you're in business and you're ready to go. There is a safety on the other side you got to remember to take off, okay? But it's pretty easy because this gun can be kept completely unloaded and brought into action very quickly by just putting the magazine in it and cycling the bolt once. You don't have to have the gun fully loaded when you've got it positioned wherever you choose to position it, okay? So magazine-fed weapon, pretty easy. Most shotguns out there that so many of us have for home defense purposes are not magazine-fed. They're pumps. Now, you can get this exact gun. This is a Mossberg Shockwave. We picked this to show this because it's small and easy to use in front of the camera, right? You can get this gun with a magazine. Big magazine, hangs out the bottom. Doesn't feed from the tube, feeds from the magazine. If that's the case, you could use it very similar to the way we just described for the other one. Similar, but not exactly the same. Mossberg, Remington, Hatsan, same company that makes this other gun. There's Stevens shotguns out there. There are lots of pump shotguns out there with short barrels that are oriented to defensive purposes. If it's a pump shotgun, it basically works the same way no matter who makes it. The controls may be slightly different in where they're placed, in some cases slightly different in how they work, but fundamentally, basically, they're the same. The Mossberg series has a safety up on the tang, which is nice because it doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed. If it's a 500 series, it's got it up here. The action release on this one's back here. But it's a pump. So back to the central issue. How do you have this thing where you're meeting that balance? It's easy to use and accessible if you need it quickly, but at the same time safe. Shotguns like this are not safe to have around with the chamber loaded all the time. If you drop the gun or start banging it around, these do not have the same safety interlocks that most modern pistols have, okay? Not to worry. There's a very time-proven, well-established technique for having a pump shotgun readily accessible and yet safe. It requires setting the gun up for that purpose. It's pretty easy. Pay close attention. I'll show you. First thing you have to do is make sure it's empty and safe. This one is. I've got the pump back. Got the action open. I can clearly look in there. I can see there are no rounds in the tube, and the chamber is empty. That is critical because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to close the pump, which locks the pump shut. The only way that pump's going to open is if I either use the action release or pull the trigger. Well, I'm going to pull the trigger because I want that action unlocked. So, critical. Number one, make sure it's empty and safe. Point it in a safe direction and pull the trigger. Why am I pointing in a safe direction? I just checked it out. I know it's empty and safe, right? I'm doing that because I want to condition my brain to always point the gun in a safe direction, whether I know it's unloaded or not. That way, when you condition yourself that way, and you do that all the time, you're really dramatically lessening the chances of a serious accident. Okay? You're conditioning your mind. You've heard of muscle memory? You're conditioning the memory that sits between your ears to be safe with this thing. Once I've pulled the trigger, the action is now loose. That's where I want it. I want the safety off. Not on. Off. You'll see why in a moment. Once I've done that, I can take, these are dummies, snap caps. I can take my shells and I can load however many I want to load in the tube. All I have to do, this weapon is completely empty and safe. It's empty. The chamber's empty. There's no round in the chamber. The rounds in the tube are fine. Nothing going on there. You could drop it. Nothing's going to happen. You don't want to drop it, but sometimes things happen, right? Drop it, knocked out of your hand, anything like that. It's safe. Rounds in the tube, ready to go. All I have to do to bring this into action is rack it once. I've now chambered my first round. I'm ready to go. I want the safety off because I don't want to have to think about the safety. In an emergency situation, I don't have to worry about that. All I got to do is pull trigger. I reach the point where I want to unload it and make it empty and safe. Then I'm going to put the safety on because I'm going to take the round out of the tube that's in there. I'm going to use the action release to unload it. Now I'm back to this empty and safe thing again, okay? There's a technical term for this whole setup. It's called condition 3. And it's actually very simple. Safety off, action unlocked, tube loaded. Okay? Safety off, action unlocked, tube loaded. How do you get the action unlocked? Make sure the empty weapon is empty and safe. Point in a safe direction. Pull the trigger. The action is now unlocked. Any pump shotgun with a tube-fed magazine, you can do that. So another factor with these guns, not really an issue with a magazine-fed gun, but with a tube-fed gun it is. It's worth mentioning. Shotgun shells, these things are just metal. They're just metal snap caps, okay? But real shotgun shells these days are plastic, right? You got a metal back and then you got a plastic front. Some of these shotguns will take lots of rounds. Mossberg has one that holds 8. You can put 8 rounds in a tube, stacked right against each other in the magazine tube, right? Over time, if you fully load that, you've compressed the magazine tube spring to maximum capacity. All these things are jammed against one another. Over time, if you pay no attention to it and you just leave it like that, over a long period of time, sometimes those plastic top ends will start to get a little deformed. I've seen this, where they get deformed enough that they start to come open a little bit. Sometimes they have filler in them, the filler will come out of them, or they just get deformed. If they get deformed enough, it might be a problem when you go to chamber one. If this is all bulged or out of shape, it could cause it to stutter. It might induce a malfunction. What's the solution to that? You don't have to load all those rounds in the magazine tube for immediate defense, okay? If you got a magazine tube capacity of 8, 4 or 5 is probably pretty good. You got a magazine tube capacity like this of 5, 3 is probably not a bad place to start. That way you're not compressing the magazine tube spring completely, and it's less pressure on the fronts of the shells. The other thing is, from time to time, and you don't have to do it every week, maybe once a month, from time to time, pull those shells out of the magazine tube and look at them. If they're starting to get deformed massively, especially if you have a gun that you've got loaded to full capacity, pull them out, look at them. If they're starting to get deformed over time, and it could take a while, I mean, they're pretty sturdy, but you get one that starts to get deformed over time, take it out of service, you shoot it on the range or something, replace it with a new shell. That way you're not risking that shell coming apart, where you get filler that comes out of it and gums up the action, or it gets big enough that it causes trouble cycling the thing. An easy way with it, not so much with the Shockwave, but an easy way with a shotgun that has a full buttstock to have shells around, is you can take those little buttstock shell holders, slide that over the buttstock, put your shells in there. You can leave the gun completely empty. Because with a pump, all you have to do is open the action, drop one round in and close the action, and you now have a round up. Now you can put these in the tube, okay? So depending on where you are, how quickly you think you need to get this into action, that's another option. Is it for everybody? Probably not. Few things are for everybody. But it might be a good way to do it if you think you want to keep the gun completely empty. When it comes to locking these things and storing them, you could put it in a gun locker. You could put it in a gun safe, keeping in mind that you got to get into these things, right? There are some electronic locks made that are designed to mount somewhere, and you can mount the gun in there and lock it up so that it can't be pulled out without the key or without the mechanism, whatever mechanism they have to unlock it. So there's ways to do that too. Putting it someplace like up high in a closet where it's not readily accessible to children or somebody who has no authorization to use it, that's another option. Ultimately, all those things are up to you. Sometimes people use single shots or double barrels. If you have those, an easy way to do that is just break the gun open, put 2 shells in it, and leave it broken open, just like you would if you're out hunting and you're crossing your creek or something and you want to break it open to make it safe so that in case you drop it, right? You can do that. If you load one of those guns fully and you close it, a lot of those guns have automatic safety, so it's another factor to consider. Most people use a pump because it's simple, it's reliable, works with any power level of ammunition. So if you follow that methodology we just showed you, safety off, action unlocked, tube loaded with however many rounds you choose to load in it, makes it very easy to bring in action. All you have to do is rack it once. We hear a lot of times people come in and they say, well, you know, when you hear that sound, if you hear that sound, that's automatically going to scare somebody away. Well, the answer is maybe it'll scare them away. You still have to be prepared to use it if you have to. Just because you racked it doesn't necessarily mean it will. If it does, wonderful, great. We don't want to have to shoot somebody unless we have no other choice, right? So, recap real quick. Magazine-fed shotgun, load the magazine. Put it in the gun, rack the slide, the bolt, you're ready to go. Pump shotgun, empty and safe, safety off, action unlocked, point of safe direction, pull the trigger, load the tube. Now all you have to do is rack it once. Other types will depend a little bit on the type of shotgun. I hope that helped a little bit with some of you who may be looking at these things and saying, just exactly how should I set this up? That's a pretty good way to do it. Okay? All right. As always, be safe. Watch what you're doing. Keep muzzles in safe direction, all that sort of thing. That's all we have for this segment. For now, I'm Alan for Old English Outfitters. Thanks for watching.